Hey guys, this is Miss Algar, and you are watching part 2 of the Dramatic Devices videos. Today we'll be talking a little bit about allusions and foil characters. So let's get started. An allusion is a reference to a person, place, event, literary work, myth, or work of art. Pretty much it is when the author almost drops a name, right? Just as you would referring to another person, the author does this, but in the piece of literature. Now, allusions can be direct or indirect, but regardless of the type of allusion that's made, the connection must be made by the reader, not the author. If the author were to give you the information or the detail to make the connection, that would actually be a plain old reference, not an allusion. And the author purposely makes this connection in order to make a point in the piece. So let's see an allusion at work. In this passage from Act 1 of Romeo and Juliet, Montague is talking to Benvolio, asking him about Romeo's current behavior. And so in this passage, Montague is talking about how Romeo has been seen at a certain alcove every morning, and that when he comes home in the morning, he goes right into his chamber and creates for himself an artificial night. And Montague is quite concerned for his son. But I want to draw your eye here. Right, should in the farthest east begin to draw the shady curtains from Aurora's bed. Aurora is the Roman goddess of the dawn. So, let me write dawn down here. So you can see that Shakespeare uses this allusion to Aurora in order to paint the image that Romeo is coming in as the dawn is coming out. So it's a very simple image that he's creating here, but he has stepped up his writing in terms of using the device of allusion. Now we're going to jump right into the foil character, and foil characters are always very interesting to me because these characters obviously have a purpose built in. And what's really great about foil characters is that they are created in order to contrast extremely with another character, almost like complete polar opposites. And this is done in order to emphasize certain characteristics of both the characters. In most works, you'll find that they're placed opposite the protagonist. It may not necessarily be the antagonist, but there is often a character that is used to help emphasize certain characteristics of this main character. So instead of giving you a couple excerpts, I wanted to just let you know who the foils are in Romeo and Juliet because we have already read and met a lot of these characters. So the characters I'm drawing lines between are the foil characters. For example, we meet Tybalt and Benvolio very early on in Act 1, Scene 1, and we note that Tybalt is very fiery and belligerent almost. He's raring to go. He just wants to fight. Whereas Benvolio is peaceful. He's the voice of reason. He tells the men to put up their swords, lift them away from each other to halt any sort of violence between them. So it's very clear here that these two members from two different houses present different characteristics to make it very clear how this feud has affected the different family members. Now the second one is Paris and Romeo. And this one's a little bit more obvious, right? Because they are both in love with Juliet. But other than the obvious fact that Paris is older than Romeo, Paris also sticks to convention. And what do I mean by convention? It means that he lives by tradition. He is a friend of Lord Capulet's, and he asks for Juliet's hand in marriage. He is definitely by the book. Whereas Romeo is a lot more reckless. He's sneaking around. He is kind of luring Juliet to him. So Shakespeare here draws for us a very distinct difference between the ways that Paris is attempting to woo Juliet and the way that Romeo does woo Juliet. And this brings us to our very last set of foils, at least that we've been introduced to. That would be Juliet and Rosaline. Now, Romeo appeals to Juliet because she is so passionate and quick to love. They both love so quickly. They look like this, right? They're just like so in love looking at what they have. Whereas Rosaline, we know, is going into the nunnery. She's going to be a nun. And this means that she's dedicated her life to God, which means that she's going to remain chaste and virginal. She's not going to have children. She's not going to get married. She's not going to have any sort of relations with men, let alone Romeo. So there's a very distinct difference here, and it can be noted that in different film adaptations, directors have taken this set of foil characters, a set of Juliet and Rosaline, and made it very distinct, the differences between the two of them. Such as in the Zeffirelli version, Rosaline is much older than Romeo, almost a decade older, whereas Juliet is this, pretty young thing who just catches his attention. So you see how these foils work not only in the writing, not only in the speech, but even in the visuals. Alright, so it's time for our recap. So we learned today about allusions and foil characters, or they're simply known as just foils. Now, what you need to know about allusions is that they reference to something else. You can check out the whole list if you rewind. But typically this is to a person, a place, an event, another work of literature, piece of mythology, or a work of art. These can happen in a direct or indirect manner, and they are meant to be made. These allusions, they are meant by the author. So the author means it, but the author doesn't give you all the information. The audience, I almost wrote author again, the audience has to make the connection. Now, foil characters, while having no very clear relation to allusions, foil characters contrast sharply with each other. And this is done in order to emphasize certain qualities or characteristics of both characters. And typically, this happens with the protagonist. The protagonist is the one who receives a foil character. Okay, so if you have any questions, please leave it in the bulletin board or in the comments box. Thanks for watching.